What newly signed slot receiver could experience a 2020 resurgence? Which young AFC tight end might crash the top 5 in the FFPC this season? And what unheralded running back won free agency for the second year in a row? Plus, the 2019 FFPC 500 number 18 Dynasty winner Paul Lee joins the show tonight to talk about Juju Smith-Schuster's bounce back, A.J. Green's Dynasty value, and the big 3 rookie running backs. We've got a great show for you. Dave Gerzak is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Your hands, everybody, if you got what it takes, 'cause I'll KRS.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for football analysis from the best fantasy players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak.
With the master rhymer, that's the lead behind the video rapper. You know the top primer, tapper. Down goes another rapper, on to another rapper. Punch up to that,
Hey, thanks a lot, Rob. Greetings and salutations, all of you Balkaholics and Gerzak addicts. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is the patron saint of fantasy football, the Dizzle, Dave Gerzak. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to talk about the new quarterbacks in Los Angeles and New England and how they're changing fantasy values for the skill guys on those teams. We'll take a look at how the tight ends finish in the FFPC in 2019 and talk to high-stakes 500 Dynasty number 18 fantasy football champ Paul Lee about how he put that team together and who he likes in rookie drafts this year. Shout out to the chat room right now. Post any questions you might have in there at HSFF Hour, at Eric Balkman, at David Gerzak is where to find us on Twitter. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour, as well as 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA if you want to give us a buzz. HighStakesFantasyFootball@gmail.com is where to reach us. Chat room questions, tweets, and emails all coming up in the fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. Dave, we're here. It's April. It's draft month. We are less than 3 weeks away from it. And I don't know exactly what the format's going to be, but I do know many of the rookie running backs and wide receivers and tight ends to a certain extent that we've talked about on these airways the last couple of months, they're going to have new homes, new NFL teams. It's a very exciting time to be a Dynasty fantasy football player.
Yeah, it's really heating up. I'm pretty excited, actually. I'm starting my prep.
Are you starting your draft prep now?
Yeah.
But that's not true because we've talked rookies already.
Yeah, I know. I've been continue to read more and more and more, watching more film now.
So my question is, are you going to be able to finish the first 1,000 pages of the rookie scouting portfolio before the draft starts? That's the question.
Highly unlikely. It's more likely I could do, more likely I could do 2,400 push-ups in 12 hours. Like Jonathan, by the way, shout out to Jonathan Bales. He did that push-up challenge.
2,400 push-ups in 24 hours? Is that what it was?
2,400 in 12 hours.
In 12 hours, okay.
And I will admit that I wasted about 90 minutes watching him do 4 push-ups every 45 seconds or so for the last 90 minutes or 2 hours. I want to see him do it.
Was he really straining through it?
Yeah, it seemed like he was. He kept on he was farting around with his triceps and pectorals and stuff. So he would do 4 at a time at the later pace. Yeah. And then he would sit up, and this nice Asian young lady would she had a pillow that she put behind his butt and legs or whatever, and he would sit back. He had a love sack there, and he would chill out for a while, and then he'd go back and do another 4. So it was smart because he didn't really build up lactic acid at all, and he did a good job.
How did he initially start it? What was he doing per hour?
I didn't watch any of the early stuff, but it seemed like he had quite a few done early. Let's say 1,400 in the first 5 hours or something like that. And I did see him. He had posted a video of how he did the first early on, and he was doing 6 at a time at that point. But he'd do 6 and then he would stop. Yeah. And then he'd come back and do 6 and stop. I don't know how long the breaks were. Clearly not as long. And then I think he took a shower and whatever. I mean, not watching the whole day or whatever.
Did he I wonder if this is a Guinness Book of World Record.
No, the Guinness Book of World Records, I mean, it's almost unfathomable, the real number.
What's the real number?
I don't know what it is offhand, and I can look it up while we're on the show. But it's something in the neighborhood of like 30,000 in 24 hours.
Oh my God!
He did very well for a human. But whoever else did, it's some insane number.
Right.
Yes.
This is interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was fascinating.
I didn't know the Incredible Hulk was real, but apparently he is.
I guess he had like a few. Originally, it was said he had $2,000 on it and he won, but I guess it was up to 17,000 or whatever. But apparently, there was like $1 million in bets overall placed on this thing. Yeah. With various sportsbook and stuff. So I think that's great.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, so good for him.
Well, we all need a distraction. We're all looking for a mental break from everything that we're going through day to day.
By the way, the only other thing I've seen that's been interesting in sports, did you see there was a Twitter, it was a 2-minute video of a marble race?
No.
Some guy was,
I did see that, yeah.
Guy was calling marble race?
Yeah.
That was worth 2 minutes.
There was...
that was kind of funny.
I saw a thing today about a cat goalie. These guys were kicking a mini soccer ball in the hallway of their house, and their cat was stoning. I mean, they're kicking it pretty hard, and the cat was slamming them down. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Cat's reaction time, pretty good.
Yeah, and the power. I mean, to knock the ball down too. He wasn't just deflecting it; he was swallowing it up. That was pretty entertaining, and that's the state of sports. Let's get to some interesting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I want to remind interesting fantasy football stuff. I want to remind everybody, Best Ball Slim Leagues as well as Best Ball Classics available at myffpc.com. Those are filling every day. 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour timers on those. Don't forget about the FFPC main event early bird. Sign up for those and get your discount right now. Dynasty startups launching this weekend again. Not just launching. Continue to launch this weekend. We're going to have more of those available. And the High Stakes Lowdown was new this week with Doug Widener, a guy who won 3 FFPC Dynasty Leagues, former guest of this show, won 3 Dynasty Leagues last year as well as a main event league and a Football Guys League. So very well-versed and good Dynasty talk, good rookie stuff on there. You talk about trade values for a lot of guys and who he likes this season, including one rookie receiver that really stood out. But I'm not going to tell you who it is. You got to listen to it, and he'll tell you why he likes him as well. And by the way, not any surprise, he converted me into being a believer in that receiver by the end of the podcast as well. I'm easily swayed, as we all know.
Never noticed.
So that's Doug Widener, rotoviz.com/podcast. All right, thanks to Roto World, Football Guys, and Rob for tonight's rundown. By the way, producer, mutual friend Rob Bryce is the audio engineer tonight. Bears general manager Ryan Pace said this week that there will be an open competition at quarterback between Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky. The Bears themselves actually tweeted this out. So Matt Nagy, the head coach, said when we walk out on the first day, whenever it is, whether it's OTAs or whether it's training camp, Mitch will be going first in the huddle, but it's going to be equal to Foles. There will be equal reps with similar players against similar players. Pace and Nagy, neither one said whether they would pick up Trubisky's fifth-year option. And Nick Foles, Dave, if you're aware of the Bears coaching staffs, their quarterbacks coach, Foles was a quarterback under John DeFilippo. Their offensive coordinator, he played for Bill Razor with the Eagles. And then Matt Nagy, he was with both Philadelphia and Kansas City. All three of these guys know Foles. I don't see any way Mitchell Trubisky is the starting quarterback for the Bears. Now that we know that it's Foles, are you upgrading any of the Bears pass catchers, namely a dude who's been falling in drafts in Allen Robinson?
Oh, so you think that Ryan Pace is totally lying, and it's a stacked deck against Trubisky?
That is correct.
Yeah, you're probably right. I like Allen Robinson. I think he's a good talent. He had a really fine year last year, even with, Trubisky didn't have a great year.
Right.
But Allen Robinson I watched a lot of Bears games, so he was open all the time.
Right.
They would keep trying to stop him. And the one thing about Trubisky, he did always look for him. He threw a lot of passes to Allen Robinson. So I don't know if I'd upgrade him that much. But, I love Allen Robinson. Even from a dynasty perspective, he's still in kind of the prime of his career. I like the guy a lot.
I'd like to think that the Bears are probably going to get a receiver on day 1 or day 2 in the draft. I'm not a believer in any of their tight ends, including the corpse of Jimmy Graham that somehow got $9 million guaranteed.
Speaking of that, Ryan Pace should be fired.
I don't.
How do you sign? Which is worse, the Jimmy Graham signing or the Randall Cobb signing?
I'm going to say Graham, because Cobb showed that he had some juice last year at Dallas. Yeah. Graham showed nothing.
Yeah, you're right. It's just terrible.
Although it's a lot more committed money to Randall Cobb too. So
I don't understand how you.
By the way, I drafted him on Wednesday.
In your Kentucky.
Not Graham, but Cobb. Yeah, in one of the Kentucky
what
best
round?
balls.
17th.
It was super. I think it was later than that. He was like my 6th or 7th receiver.
Balky played in the Kentucky $39.
Oh yeah, you know it. It was a blast. I had a good time.
I'm a little bit peeved at Farrell.
Yeah.
Because we offered $35.
Right, you're undercutting Farrell.
No, well we had ours out earlier. First of all.
Right.
So like RT Sports, I think has $29 leagues. So ours are $35, higher end, right? We're Nordstrom. They're like Macy's or JCPenney's or whatever. What is Farrell supposed to be? Neiman Marcus with $39 leagues? I don't really care for him going over us.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. There's my little.
Oh, it was.
Thing about that. It's not cool for him to go above us on the price.
I commission these FFPC drafts, and it's like hopping, in a Miata. But I was driving the Rolls Phantom on Wednesday night with Kentucky. That was a blast.
Hey, I love my Miata.
They covered the draft on the Kentucky podcast too. I'm in the middle of listening to that. It was entertaining as always. But in any event, I actually like Allen Robinson quite a bit this year, Dave. I know there's a lot of people that are sort of jumping on the Anthony Miller bandwagon because he came on late last year. But I think it's Robinson and then a rookie, and I'm really not interested in any other Bears.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of Anthony Miller's talent, and he hasn't shown me really much of anything to disprove that. So I'm going to stick with that narrative. Keep with that.
All right, moving on. The Chiefs have restructured Sammy Watkins' contract. Therese Paylor on Twitter had this report. He was going to be the largest cap hit in the NFL among receivers this year at $21 million. But with the restructure, he gets $9 million in base salary with a chance to reach $16 million in additional incentives. And if you know Watkins, you know he's not sniffing $16 million in incentives this year. It actually, Dave, I don't know if you knew this, but at one point within the last week or two, Kansas City Chiefs were $144 under the cap.
That's hilarious.
Unbelievable. This created $5 million in savings for the Chiefs, and it looks like he's going to be in the slot again this year for Kansas City, at least for 2020. This, I think, causes McCole Hardman's development to take a little bit of a back seat. And, Demarcus Robinson, they also signed to a one-year deal there. Are you liking Watkins this year, Dave? Because I can't remember, quite frankly, when he's been cheaper in drafts. He is currently going at the 1804 of Best Ball's wide receiver 63. That's sure to go up now that we know where he's going to be, but I don't know how much.
In that area, I don't think that's very expensive for Sammy Watt. I mean, he does have a pretty slim chance, but he has a chance to kind of reemerge. And you just never know. Tyreek Hill, he could get injured, something happens. I mean, he's a speed guy. He could have a hamstring issue. Travis Kelce is not a young guy. So Watkins could emerge in the 17th round. When you have Mahomes throwing the ball, I think it's worth a stab at Sammy Watt. Even let's just say it's 18th round, they move to the 16th round. I still think that's a pretty nice spot to take Sammy Watkins. By the way, good job by his agent too. I mean I always think it's funny when players refuse to renegotiate when their contracts are completely just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. That was smart. Now he's getting money again. It's great.
McCole Hardman, Dave, this is really surprising to me. He was actually going in the 10th round. Demarcus Robinson in the 24th, Watkins in the 18th. And I think the reason for that, this is over the last 7 days in FFPC Best Ball, it's because Robinson was a free agent and Watkins obviously was going to be a cut candidate. I mean, there's no way I'm sniffing McCole Hardman in the 10th anymore. But which one do you like better as far as Watkins in the 18th or Demarcus Robinson in the 24th for the Chiefs' number 2 receiver?
Right, yeah, I would take Sammy Watkins then. Okay. I mean, because Robinson had a few good games, but I think he kind of fell off after that.
Not a pedigree guy either, like Mr. 4th overall pick Sammy Watkins.
That's true.
Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans because Derrick Henry made waves this week when he signed his $10.2 million franchise tag. Adam Schefter reported that the two sides are committed to working out a long-term extension before mid-July. And you look at Derrick Henry, this is a guy that I wasn't on board with drafting for most of his career. A lot of people say he's game script dependent. It's not necessarily true. He had 16 touches in every single game for Tennessee last year. And you remember this, too. The Titans let Deion Lewis go to free agency. He signed with somebody, and I can't remember who now. It's not
I forgot to, even though we talked about it.
Yeah, it's I can't remember who it was, but it's not with Tennessee. And if they don't...
The Giants?
Oh, that's who it was. Yeah, the New York Giants. If they don't add like another, potential third down pass catcher, you're looking at Derrick Henry being a 3-down guy, and he averaged 10.1 yards per catch over the course of his career, Dave. Going at 108 on average as the 6th running back off the board. I mean, it's so funny because Joe Mixon goes right after him, And to me, I think that's a significant drop-off between those two players.
Yeah, you have a better team, better quarterback. You're not going to have a rookie quarterback. And a player who was the number 3 running back last year, I'm on board with Henry. I'm not as confident. I mean, they're going to grab some other running back that's going to be a pass-catching back, probably maybe in the draft. There's
not much else in free agency left.
Yeah, so I'm feeling pretty good about Henry at the 8th.
Okay.
You know, people always complain / bitch about the 8 pick or 9 pick or whatever.
Right.
You know, you take Derrick Henry. What's wrong with that? Stop complaining.
Yeah,
it's a good pick.
And where did he go last year in drafts? I mean,
like
he wasn't
third?
wasn't going in the first round.
Third round, something like that.
I guess that's neither here nor there. So that's where we're at with Derrick Henry officially signing his franchise tag. No potential possibility of a holdup. We have Paul Lee coming up, the 500 number 18 Dynasty champ, will be with us shortly. The last thing I want to get to before we talk to him is Gilbert Manzano's tweet about what Anthony Lynn had to say about Tyrod Taylor, saying he's in the driver's seat to start this season, but nothing is finalized. They could have added Cam Newton. They have not. They could have traded for Andy Dalton. They have not. Jameis Winston was out there. They didn't add him. Okay, so Anthony Lynn was, I can't remember if he was the OC or if he was the head coach of Buffalo back in 2016 when Tyrod Taylor was the starting quarterback, and they led the league in rushing yards. You have a guy who has a lot of experience, who put up good fantasy numbers, by the way, when he was a starter in Tyrod Taylor. Are you convinced that Tyrod Taylor is the guy? And if so, how is that affecting you drafting Hunter Henry and Keenan Allen and some of those Chargers pass catchers? We'll skip Mike Williams because I think you're avoiding him.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking, to be honest, if you have those players, if you have them in Dynasty, if you have Keenan Allen. It's very concerning, actually, because if they try and run this offense and try and imitate Baltimore, where Tyrod Taylor, which would be great for Tyrod Taylor, it makes him a value in best ball leagues if he actually is a starter, all of a sudden becomes a viable QB2. However, if they throw for 2,800 yards while he runs for 1,000, what does that do for Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry? Their values go right in the toilet, actually. So that's a problem. I think it is. I am surprised, honestly, though, that Winston's still out there. I know
Cam Newton is also out there.
Cam's out. Cam's out there. He looks like he's in good shape and he's hungry. I know that these guys aren't perfect players, but they're darn good quarterbacks. Part of the problem might be that they're still looking for big money. Maybe the longer you wait, the more they get the Belichick offers of like, hey, $4 million for a year, or $8 million or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's for a quarterback. They got to sign him for more than that, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. Probably.
I mean, if they're ilk, maybe they're just getting ready for XFL in 2021. You never know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what to believe. I do know that I do believe we're going to welcome in our guest for the night, ladies and gentlemen. This is his 8th year playing in the FFPC. He has 4 Dynasty teams along with some best ball teams so far already for the upcoming season. Over the course of his career, 2 Dynasty championships under his belt, a Football Guys League title, a main event season sweep. He's here to talk specifically about his 500 number 18 Dynasty title in the FFPC last year. Please welcome in Paul Lee. Paul, thanks for popping on with us this week, man.
Okay, thanks for having me on, guys.
Are you staying safe? Are you staying inside? Is this like your outlet to the outside world tonight here on this gorgeous Friday?
Yeah, definitely staying safe, being all that. Getting out and golfing, that's about the one thing I do get out and do. Try to stay safe, get some exercise and stuff like that. How about you guys?
Well, with Dave and I are not golfers, but you know what I found out today, Dave?
You know why I'm not a golfer? It's because none of my freaking friends golf. If any of you guys would golf, I would go golfing.
The real Leroy golfs.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
He works shift work. He
right.
shift switches every week.
All right, so it's not.
Hey, do you want to shoot the twilight 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. like 9 holes
with the neon yellow ball?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I got to work at 10.
No,
sorry, Paul. We will interview you eventually.
No, but Paul, this is what I was going to say. I found out today that Wisconsin and Michigan are the only states in the lower 48 that have the golf courses closed right now for physical distancing. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, golf is like the perfect sport for this.
Yeah, it totally is. Paul, we're going to get into fantasy football here shortly. Can you tell us, before we get into that, what you do for a living?
So I'm an estimator for a mechanical contractor down in Cincinnati, Ohio. So bidding all the public jobs and hospitals and all that stuff.
Paul, are you a Bengals fan then?
No, actually I'm a Steelers fan.
Oh, Steelers. Okay, Steeler Nation representing here tonight. It's
Yes, sir.
It's prevalent all throughout the country, Dave. Everybody's a Steelers fan.
Well, uniforms are cool. The team's done great. I like the Steelers too.
Six titles, 6 Super Bowl titles. Is that what it is? Yeah, it's a lot.
No problemo. Speaking of champions, let's talk about fantasy a little bit. You had Mike Gesicki came in late in your 518 championship team. He had a bad rookie year, but he really looked pretty good. I didn't really care for him that much, but he looked really great last year. What do you think of him now? This is his third year, right, Paul? Yeah, third year. What do you think? Third year,
yeah, will be.
I guess, continuing the breakout, Paul?
I think so. I mean, he finished 12th last year. Last 5 weeks, he finished 6th in tight end fantasy points. So I think he's going to keep it going and finish somewhere in between there, around 6 or 12, low end tight end 1.
I'm just looking. I wanted to see where he is, how FFPC players are treating him as far as best ball goes, and he actually is going as the 13th tight end off the board, late in the 8th round, right behind Noah Fant and Dallas Goedert, and then right in front of T.J. Hawkinson and O.J. Howard. Lots to like with Gesicki, and the way that he came on last year. I'm with you. I think that he continues to blossom. He continues to become more of a playmaker down there. He was a superior athlete coming out of college, and I think he just needed to learn how to be a little bit better of a football player. And to me, he definitely passes the eye test. Paul, for the most part in this league last year, you won in spite of Juju Smith-Schuster's 2019 performance. What are the chances he bounces back this year with a, seemingly, as far as we can tell, for the most part, healthy Ben Roethlisberger?
Yeah, I say if Big Ben's healthy, he'll get back to where he was 2018-ish, around the top 10 receiver. I don't see any issues with that. As long as he's healthy, that's the big question now.
Dave, are you with me on? Are you with Paul on the Juju Smith-Schuster bounce back? Are you a believer?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I know that Ben got lost, but losing Antonio Brown is a big thing because he was, Juju was in the slot for so much, and Brown was drawing so much coverage. Or Deontay Johnson, is he going to draw that coverage?
Yeah, he's not. But I mean, that's the guy
going to draw that coverage. I mean, I don't know. I'm not quite. I don't know. I'm not quite as high maybe as you guys are, but I still like him a lot. I have him in a lot of dynasty leagues.
Wide receiver 13 is how and this is best ball over the last week. Wide receiver 13 in the mid-4th round. So he's still being drafted as a fringe wide receiver 1. And certainly you would think he's on the upswing, Dave, of his career, and certainly has the potential to have a big season with Big Ben again this year.
So speaking of big seasons, is there any players that you were forced to cut, Paul, that you think are going to have a big season and you're kind of annoyed at our terrible, roster rules here in Dynasty? And I know the one thing, we appreciate your loyalty and also that you always keep a kicker in defense so I don't have to go in and, email you and complain about, how you didn't keep them. So anyone you had to cut that you're really regretting?
I don't know about regretting, but the tough one was Rashad Perriman. It's between him and Curtis Samuel, so you can kind of see him doing something with the Jets, but Adam Gase scares me a little bit there too, so that's kind of why I went with Samuel on that.
Yeah, the thing is with Perriman, this is like the last 2 years, I want to say. He basically did nothing for the first 2/3 of the season and then came on like gangbusters. And so for anybody who saw what he did in 2018 and drafted him somewhat high in 19, they were disappointed because for the majority of the season, he was nowhere to be found. Now, they lose Robbie Anderson. He goes to Carolina. They still have Jamison Crowder there. You'd like to think Sam Darnold gets a little bit better at spreading the ball around. I think that they're going to draft a receiver early. But Perriman, I don't know. I know what he did last year, Paul, but I don't – if it was down between Perriman, a guy who I was ready to write off as a bust that would never see the field again, and Samuel, a guy who, obviously was a big hype guy last year, who I think is an ascending talent, I'm definitely keeping Samuel over Rashad Perriman. I think you made the right call there, but time will tell. We'll see. We're talking with 2019 FFPC 500 number 18 Dynasty champ Paul Lee here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Let's talk about Tampa. because this is interesting. Speaking of stuff that's happened 2 years in a row now, the Buccaneers did not sign a running back in free agency, and this year they let Peyton Barber sign with Washington. They have like 15 guys in their backfield in Washington now. Does Ronald Jones make for a nice dynasty buy, or is it a foregone conclusion that Tampa's going to be selecting a new running back on day 1 or day 2 to go with Tom Terrific in that backfield?
Yeah, I think Bruce Arians going to get his running back somewhere second, third round this draft. They'll probably still have Jones, but I think he'll be gone by the end of this year.
Yeah, Dave and I were actually talking this week about Ronald Jones trading him in Dynasty because I've been trying to do it. You know, I feel like I'm holding, you know, those cartoon bombs that are shaped, they look like a bowling ball and the fuse is slowly burning. I feel like I'm holding the Ronald Jones bomb right now. And I'm
like 5 versus 5.
Yeah,
man.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I'm trying to.
Shows how old we are.
Right. Well, I'm like the black spy, and I'm trying to toss it to the white spy in exchange for like a second-round pick before the bomb goes off. And the bomb, I think, is going to be scheduled to be going off in the NFL draft, like you said. Now, it didn't happen last year, and that really shocked me. And then Jones, I don't want to say he underwhelmed last year. I think he finished as a top 25 running back, so he wasn't terrible. In fact, he came on quite a bit at the end of last season. But Dave was telling me about what he was going for in some of these FFPC Dynasty leagues. I'm like, my God, I got to send out some offers. And in the one league I owned him in, I sent out like 5 offers. One of them got rejected. Then I sent another offer to that same guy. It got rejected. And then, as you might expect, the other 4 guys never replied to me. So I still have Ronald Jones. I feel like I need to get some.
What about a?
I need to get into a bomb-proof shelter right now.
Dude, maybe start offering them for 2021 seconds.
Okay,
that's pretty cheap.
But
getting cheap, right?
But I did do
Paul,
that.
What do you think about 2021 seconds? Is that what side are you on that one?
I wouldn't give up my 2021 second for him, personally.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I sent out a few packages and some of them included 2021 second-round picks for people who had already traded away their 2020 seconds this year. That's the way it ended up working out. I know you are not a Bengals fan, but Dave has a Bengals question for you, Paul, regarding one of their longtime stalwarts on that franchise.
Yeah, so speaking of rookie picks, let's talk. A.J. Green, what would it take? Okay, I like to do this in 2 different parts. So so if you own A.J. Green, and so when you were someone made you an offer, what would you accept for a 2020 pick, and then let's say a 2021 pick as a separate offer from someone else?
2020, I probably wouldn't go any lower than a second round. The chances of him being healthy, and if he gets Burrow, he could have a real big season, especially if you're competing for a championship this year. If you're rebuilding, it may be a little different story.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got to have clarity on where your team's going, but that does make sense. You know, if the thing is, I'm kind of done with thinking A.J. Green is going to stay healthy. It just doesn't seem to be in the cards, and he's getting up there in age too, and his body's undergone so many injuries that it's difficult for me to see him bounce back as well as stay healthy for an entire season. So that might be a bomb with the fuse much closer to going off. All these bomb analogies tonight. We got to move past it. All right, we're talking with Paul Lee, the winner of the 500 Dynasty League number 18 in the FFPC last year. Let's talk about some rookies here, and I want to lead things off with Alabama receiver Henry Ruggs. This was actually pretty contentious on Draft Twitter or Draft Fantasy Twitter a month or so ago about how he was a very polarizing subject. A lot of guys out there, a lot of analysts said that he's basically a speed merchant, and that's all he is. He's not a receiver. He's just a fast guy. And then there's tons of pushback against that. Well, look at the film. Look what he did here. Look what he did here. I'm curious to how you think Henry Ruggs' skills are going to translate to the NFL. Is he simply just going to top out as a deep threat, or is he going to be something more than that?
Depends where he goes. I think he has the skills to be full set receiver, but it kind of depends on if he goes somewhere like not Kansas City, but uses them like Tyreek Hill, he could have a huge career.
Yeah, I see. I'm totally
There's no
biased.
doubt.
I'm biased when it comes to him. I think I said this on the show before because it looked like when he was coming out of high school, it looked like he was going to sign with Florida State, and I love Florida State. I'm a huge Florida State fan. And then he spurned him to go to Nick Saban at Alabama, which just totally frustrated me. So I've always hated him ever since.
Maybe he couldn't get into Florida State.
That's probably yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
By the way, Dr. Myron Roll, former All-American safety at Florida State, is on the front lines fighting the coronavirus right now. A former Rhodes Scholar, Dave, who went to Florida State and played football there.
I'm sure he didn't.
I don't know how many Rhodes Scholars attended Alabama, but I'll tell you that there was one of these.
That's where legends are made.
For Florida. That's right. That's exactly right. Have you done enough research on Henry Ruggs to offer any commentary on him as far as?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think he's just gonna be a speed guy.
I think he's gonna be good.
Yeah, I think he'll actually be pretty legitimately decent.
Okay.
I think that. Paul makes a good point. If they only, send him on 9 routes, that's not very good. But I think he's talented enough that he's not. I think fast is definitely one of his assets, but I think that's not the only one.
The other thing to keep in mind too, and certainly we've seen speed guys drafted in round 1 before that never materialized. But you'd like to think that a team that's forward thinking enough to draft a guy like him in the first round is going to utilize him and not just, hey, we're going to spend this premium pick on a guy we just want flying down the field. I don't think many teams operate that way. Maybe Houston. I don't know.
Yeah, when you look at how you see Kansas City with Tyreek Hill is an easy comparison, but other NFL teams love to emulate. You look at how they use Tyreek Hill and how Steve Smith got used way back when. It's like, all right, do a 1-yard route and have everybody go block when you're running trips right or something like that. That's an easy play to gain 7 to 9 yards almost every time with those fast plays.
Speaking of 7 to 9 yards, I think the next 3 guys that you're going to ask Paul about, that had to be pretty near their yards per carry, the way that they crushed college football rushing records at their respective schools, Dave.
All right, so these are the top 3 running backs per the whatever, something. Right? I mean, kind of the general consensus.
Yeah, general consensus.
Jonathan Taylor of the great school of Wisconsin, J.K. Dobbins, and DeAndre Swift. Do you have a favorite, and why?
Right now, leading the way has got to be Jonathan Taylor. Just after the combine and everything he's done in college, the way he's performed, he's got to be there right now until we see where everybody gets drafted. For me.
Yeah, I've had a problem with Wisconsin running backs, basically pre Melvin Gordon. I was not, they just didn't really have the greatest
Ron
career.
Day didn't do it for you?
No, Ron Day did not do it for me. Neither did Terrell Fletcher, Brent Moss, Monte Ball. They were
Monte Ball, the 4'6" Monte Ball.
Yeah, they did not get.
But like 204 and you ran a 4'6".
But I'll say this, Melvin Gordon and James White turned into 2 pretty good players in the NFL, and I think Taylor is probably better than both those guys. So I hold out hope, but I also like DeAndre Swift. He's probably the best pass catcher of the 3. Dobbins I'm still not sure about. But I think for me it's probably Taylor and then Swift, but it's like 1A and 1B there. That was a question from Dave. I want to get to some questions from some of the listeners here for you, Paul. This first one's from Tim in Boston. He writes, "Hi, Paul. Is Phillip Rivers an upgrade for the Colts skill position guys over Jacoby Brissett?" Thank you.
He's an upgrade over Andrew Luck.
That is Tim in Boston.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big time.
So you look at what Brissett did for T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell and Doyle and Ebron and Marlon Mack last year. Your thoughts on Rivers this year? What skill position guys should we be upgrading there now that we know Rivers is tossing the rock?
Yeah, I say definitely upgrade like Hilton. If Campbell can get healthy and get on the field, it should help Mack out getting out there. I know he's not catching the ball, but Himes might be pretty good since he likes to pepper his running backs like Eckler. So I think Rivers going there is really good for all of them.
Dave, do you have any thoughts on Rivers' shot putting it to Hilton downfield?
Yeah, I think he can launch at 19 to 20 yards still. I think he's all right.
He can still get it up there.
Yeah, I know Rivers didn't kill it last year. I think he's fine. He's a professional quarterback. He's very prepared. He's spending a lot of time with his 13 kids right now with this coronavirus going on.
Yeah, but how does that work out? I mean, doesn't he have to split his family up?
I know, they can't even hang out in the same kitchen.
No, they can't. It's just
he might get like a pass or something.
I don't know.
They're all together.
Money can buy you a lot. I don't know if it buys you enough social distancing. All right, final email here for you, Paul. Scott in San Diego. What's up, fellas? Do you view Randall Cobb as underrated right now, or is he bound to disappoint for Houston? That is Scott in San Diego. Paul, what do you think about Cobb? They trade Hopkins away, and then they give Cobb that 3-year, $27 million contract. It's basically him, Will Fuller, and Kenny Stills there right now. Kiki Cutie will be undoubtedly watching from the sidelines as he rehabs some sort of soft tissue leg injury. But you look at Randall Cobb. What are your thoughts on him in 2020?
Oh, Kyle, I haven't thought much about it, but he'd be down there still for me. I've got a feeling they'll be drafting a receiver at the second-round pick that they get, but he's going to probably put up some points, but it might be inconsistent out there. Never know what they're going to do.
You might be the only healthy receiver on the team every week.
You could be.
Yeah, because I guess Stills battles stuff too. I mean, not as bad as Fuller and QT, but they got to be drafting somebody too, especially with that second-round pick they picked up.
Such a mess of crap over there. I mean, look at those. Walkie, list off those receivers again. Let's just walk through them for us.
Will Fuller.
Like you're like the announcer. You're
No, I don't want to do that's stupid.
Oh, it's great.
From USC, Will Fuller. Where
do you go to Notre Dame?
Fuller went to USC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was good enough.
From Oklahoma, Kenny Stills. Another bad one. And Kiki QT, I can't remember where he went. And then
Cobb.
I mean, but the point remains, they got to be drafting somebody on day two. I can't see them giving up Hopkins and doing nothing for the line in front of Watson and giving him nothing. Unless they're going to split out David Johnson. That would be a good way to elongate his career.
Yeah. Well, they got all those awesome tight ends too, right?
Yeah. Waring. Kahil Waring is down there.
I wonder how many push-ups he could do.
Darren Fells.
Kahil Waring has big pipes. I bet he could do a couple.
Where did he go to school? Was he Hawaii or something like that? Or somewhere out west?
I don't remember.
Maybe not that far west. All right. In any event, Paul's been very gracious with his time here. Dave, let's get to one final question here for him.
All right, Paul. So we need a rookie, since you're a Dynasty expert, and we're going to call you that, whether you like it or not. We need a rookie that's going to be a bust in the NFL and a sleeper rookie to target in the Dynasty rookie drafts. And keep in mind, I haven't done my research, so I always use these for real drafts.
So my bust would be KJ Hamler, kind of running on that speed guy thing. He kind of reminds me of like a little Tavon Austin, maybe a little John Ross just there on the bust-wise. And then the sleeper, I got Tyler. Yeah, and then Tyler Johnson's one of my big sleepers, hoping he's going to be there in the third round in the rookie draft. He tore it up at Minnesota for 4 straight years and a great contested catch receiver.
Yeah,
Tyler Johnson in Minnesota, I like that.
And by the way, this is we've heard Brian Edwards a lot on this program. We're starting to hear a lot of Tyler Johnson as well as far as sleepers go in rookie drafts. And the other thing to keep in mind with Johnson is he basically did it. He did it all 4 years, but the last two, they had, and I'm going to forget the dude's name, Rashad Bateman, I want to say was his name, the younger cat that is still at Minnesota. He was crushing it too. So you had Tyler Johnson continue to put up awesome numbers when there was like a second team All Big Ten guy on the other side of him. So I think there's something to be said for that, and the fact of where he's going to be going now in rookie drafts to me suggests, and there's no more workouts. There's not we're not really going to hear any more pre-draft buzz. So landing spot will be huge for him, and it could pay off huge.
So who's the bust again? Just so I have it down.
KJ Hamler.
From Penn State.
Hamler, Penn State.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down here.
I'm not a fan. As Packers fans, I see a lot of mock drafts mocking Hamler or Jalen Reagor to the Packers, and I'm like, man, I hope that doesn't happen. I don't really care for either one of those guys.
It's so funny when you get mock drafts when they target specific players, and it's just like, all right.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
it is what it is.
A little something.
A
little extreme.
Well, listen,
you got to fill an hour. Unlike this show where we could fill 4 hours.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, and the good part about it. Yeah. Well, listen, our solution tonight was clearly bringing on Paul Lee to talk Dynasty Fantasy Football. Paul, I certainly appreciate you hopping on. Congratulations on your success. Good luck defending the belt in 500 number 18 this year, and I hope you enjoy all your leagues this summer, and good luck in all of them. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on.
Paul Lee, ladies and gentlemen, the FFPC 500 number 18 Dynasty League champ from 2019. Kern Reeve popping in the chat. Who is your top Dynasty rookie tight end, David?
Read off my answer.
Dave says the dude with the big long name, and then the Stanford guy. So
there you go. You know what? 2 years from now, let's look back on this podcast and be like, holy crap, it was the dude with the long name and then the Stanford guy are both great.
I'm trying to figure out. God, I can't even. Where did he go? The guy with the long last name. That was Albert something. Was he Missouri, or is Missouri?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Albert Aquabenum. Albert Aquabenum. Okay, so you're saying him. I don't know the Stanford tight end, though. Does Stanford always have a good tight end?
First of all, I could say that. That's actually a good point because I could say it every year.
Right.
And like half the years, I'd be like, oh, yeah, the Stanford guy.
They had Hooper and maybe it was just Hooper. No, I think about it.
No, it was the white dude from
Kobe Fleener?
Yeah, Fleener. I mean, granted, he didn't turn out good, but whatever. I mean, it wasn't.
Alex Smith also went there as well.
Give me a second.
Oh, Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was a Stanford guy.
Yeah, holy crap. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'll find him. I gotta look it up quick.
Okay. All right, you do that. Okay, so for me, you know who else I kind of like, and he had a horrible 2019, but he could have been a first-round pick last year, is Jared Pinkney out of Vanderbilt. I think he obviously didn't have the greatest of combines, and he underwhelmed last year, but I think that guy is going to be going way too late in drafts.
Colby Parkinson.
There you go, I presume. So you like him or Aquabenum?
Yeah, Aquavelva or Colby.
Aquavelva, yeah.
Troutman, Parkinson. Who's Troutman?
Troutman is a guy from...
Troutman, he was actually Rambo's drill sergeant, I think, in First Blood.
Yeah, well, that's different Troutman. No, he was a MAC guy, I think. Played in, like, Toledo or Dayton or something. Dayton, Adam Troutman. Played at Dayton. Had a pretty successful 2019 season last year. He's all right. I'm going to stick with the Big O and say he's my number one Dynasty tight end, but Dave, I'll tell you this right now. With this receiver class and the running backs, I'm going to be focusing all my late-round picks on those positions, and I'm kind of ignoring tight end.
Yeah. I'm probably, I'll look at it if it's late enough. I might look at Tua if he falls a little bit at quarterback. What? You were the person who was complaining to me about having to draft Lamar Jackson, I think, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and then you snagged him on me in whatever league it was, Carrington or something.
Carrington,
and you still have him.
I have him in another Dynasty league, too.
Yeah, Gridiron. I think the two leagues, the leagues.
No, I don't. Oh, yeah, I do have him in Gridiron.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. Well, that was a dispersal
I'm not
draft,
saying,
though.
by the way, yeah, you're right. And I'm not saying you took him because only I was telling you.
No, I drafted him. That's right. I got the pick in the dispersal draft, and then I drafted Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, well, that was like the early second, I think you took him. It was actually it was a nice value pick.
Yeah. Okay, so here's my problem with quarterbacks. Number one, I always feel like I have too many of them, even though I usually only carry one. But I got burned by drafting Johnny Manziel everywhere in like the second and third rounds of rookie drafts when he was coming in the NFL, and obviously he never materialized. And that was like after years of arm twisting of, hey, you should take a quarterback, and I fought it. And then finally I relented, and I took Manziel everywhere, and he was terrible, which sucked. And then I don't even know how I got back on the horse to draft Lamar Jackson in those leagues. But it worked out. I don't know. I'm not – for rookie drafts like that, I want the mystery box. I want the guys that could take me to the top at running back or receiver. It always seems like I can find a quarterback off the waiver wire when I need it.
Yes, I'm sure you can find a quarterback off the waiver wire.
Yeah, well, that's all I need. I just need one for the bye week when Lamar Jackson's not playing.
Hey, man, at least you got Ronald Jones on your team instead of drafting a top quarterback.
Yeah, well.
Just kidding.
Who was in that draft? Was that the Lamar Jackson draft?
I got to tell you. All right, I'm going to tell you about one of my dynasty leagues. And I'm not going to brag it up. I'm going to say this. In that one league, I had Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Kyler Murray I drafted last year. I had all four of those guys. I ended up trading away Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I didn't even get the proper value for either of them. but I still have Murray and Dak Prescott, and it made my team way better because everyone else undervalued quarterbacks. It made a huge difference.
No,
if you stack them, it can happen. It can work.
All right. One other thing I want to get to before we look at how the tight ends finished, Dave.
Are we still doing this year in review?
Yeah, we are. It's last one. Okay, sorry.
Does your wife have coronavirus?
No, she has texted
Is there an
me.
issue?
No, the issue's over, or will be when I get home. That sounds terrible, by the way, but it's all good. Okay, so the Athletics, Jeff Howe.
This is behind a paywall because they're behind a paywall.
No, they're not.
Not?
It started, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago. For 90 days, everything's free on the Athletic. By the way, we didn't even talk about NFL Game Pass being free. Did you see that's free as well?
First of all, I don't know what that is. And second of all, no.
All right, so NFL Game Pass basically unlocks any game, fast games, full games, highlights.
Are you aware that there's no games right now?
Right, but what
do I give a shit?
But what I'm saying is you can watch all these classic games. So for instance,
I'm kidding, but okay.
You know what? Okay, so like the Packers-Steelers Super Bowl from 2010. I watched that in like 2 hours the other night.
Oh my God! So I can actually watch a former game from like 10 years ago?
Yeah, well, okay. I think it's cool. And it's normally you
have to pay for this?
Normally I have to pay for it. You don't have to pay for it right now. Well, they can't YouTube all the good stuff. I mean, you could go on YouTube and then like watch the 3.5-hour marathon. But with this, it's like, and you could watch it in like 40 minutes too.
Yeah, I was watching push-ups last night, so anything's better.
All right. So in any event, The Athletic, which you can read for free right now, Jeff Howe's report, says that barring unforeseen circumstances, Jarrett Stidham appears to have the inside track on the Patriots starting quarterback job. Brian Hoyer, who just signed his, 15th or 16th contract with New England, only signed for just over $1 million, and allegedly was told that he will compete for the job. But I don't think there's any secret out there about Brian Hoyer. We know who he is. He's 34 years old and can come in and manage the game, but he's not going to win you a game, clearly. Stidham, while he was at Auburn, could have been the number 1 overall pick, according to many pundits out there. But
why wasn't he?
Well, he played, Dave, and people said, I don't like that about him. I don't like that about him. I don't like this about him. He played. Then he ended up transferring. He transferred from Baylor to Auburn. That's what it was. And it looks like it's going to be Stidham and Hoyer as the top 2 quarterbacks in New England. He was the 133rd overall selection in 2019, and it doesn't appear that New England has any interest right now in trading for Andy Dalton or signing Cam Newton to one of those Belichick vintage 1-year contracts. So you look at...
You can't get quarterbacks, so you can get receivers.
Right, yeah. So you look at the New England situation, Dave. Outside of Julian Edelman, do you like anybody here? And I'm including the running backs here.
Yeah, James White.
You still like James White?
Yeah, I love James White.
I drafted him on Wednesday.
So okay, let's put rose-colored glasses on with Stidham, right? You bring in Hoyer, who knows the system.
Yep.
Just whatever the Perkins system that they talk about. Stidham's had a year in the system. Belichick's not even arguably the best coach of all time. He is the best coach of all time.
Yeah.
And Hoyer, they bring him in like, we're going to pay you $1 million and you're going to coach up this kid and we'll see what happens. Now Wasp guy just brought up that they're going to draft a quarterback and they probably will, maybe they will. But if they don't draft someone early, I think that the team is going to do everything possible. And he had, Matt Castle is in there for that year and he did fine. I think good coaching, is really important. And I think that they can have productive fantasy players without Tom Brady, clearly.
Kaz wants to know in the chat, would Bill Belichick tank for Trevor Lawrence, who might be the number 1 overall pick coming out of Clemson in 2021?
I don't think it's in Belichick's DNA to tank.
That line from Armageddon, Ben Affleck's talking about Bruce Willis, is like, he'll take care of it. Harry doesn't know how to fail.
He's not able to do that. I don't think. I just don't think he's able to do that.
I think.
Well, how does it? I mean, because then you have to, because he always preps and puts in the game plan every week. How do you put in the game plan to suck enough to just not quite get there?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he can't. I don't think he can do.
Well,
that.
and you look at the other things that they could have easily let Matthew Slater go in free agency. They re-upped him, and he's a special teams guy, Dave. It's just they're making these signings that appear to be ones that a team that feels like they're contending would make.
They are.
And here's the other thing. I think Brady and Belichick both are on FU tours this year.
Yeah.
And they both want to show everybody that it was me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That Brady could do it without Belichick. Belichick could do it without Brady. As much as those guys have won over the years, I think that this is the next challenge for him.
You know what I think the best thing ever would be? Is if they both went 4-12. Now, you know what? You both blew it.
All right.
You should have just stayed together.
Yeah. All right, so that could be the best ever. What if they both go 12-4 and meet in the Super Bowl?
That would also be quite excellent. As I've said before, as long as we have a season, I don't care who.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I'm with you on that. All right, let's talk about how the tight ends finished, Dave, in 2019.
At least we saved this great part till the end.
You have the list in front of you there. Yep, that's it. Okay, now was that really it?
No, that was the early part of the show. I got the list right below here.
All right, so I don't want to talk about everybody on this list, but I do want to highlight a few. And the first one I want to highlight is the number 2 tight end in FFPC scoring last year, Darren Waller out of the Las Vegas Raiders. He was a guy that we actually had touted on this show as a guy who could break out last year, and break out he did. But, Dave, we don't know. There's a little bit of quarterback uncertainty now. We don't know if it's going to be Carr or how long it's going to be Carr. If Mariota comes in, they go out and sign Jason Witten. They go out and sign Nelson Aguilar, and you got to believe that they're going to be drafting a receiver too early. So I'm just curious to hear from you, and before I tell you where Darren Waller is going, is he a top 3 tight end again in 2020, in your opinion?
Top 3. I think he's got a possibility. I think that. Barring anything else, I think he should be top 5 or 6.
He is right now going as the tight end 5. Obviously behind the
Kittle,
big 3.
Ertz,
Kittle, Ertz, Kelsey, Mark Andrews is going ahead of him. Darren Waller is actually going at the 408, and he's kind of in an area by himself because Ertz goes essentially a round before him, and then Hunter Henry's going well over a round after him.
And to be clear, if 2 things. He only outscored Kittle and Ertz by about 8 points. So if there was like a 9-yard touchdown that he somehow didn't catch, then he would have been the 4th tight end. And then Mark Andrews finished 5th, and he got rid of the red-haired albatross Hayden Hurst.
He has red hair. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think I tan better than Hayden Hurst.
I got to look up a picture of him.
He skipped town. He should have been on Game of Thrones with his red hair. He should have been one of those wildlings.
Yeah.
So Hurst skipped town. So, I mean, that's good for Mark Andrews.
Yeah, he does look like a wildling. Holy cow.
Right? Yeah.
He looks like a 35-year-old wildling.
And he's only 27, probably.
I've got a thicker hairline than he does.
Yeah, so you have some upside arguments for Andrews. And, Lamar Jackson's only getting better as a passer. He's still a young QB. So I think there's an argument to be made for Waller dropping to 5th. Although you could also make the argument Goddard's going to impact Ertz even more, and that Waller should. He's still definitely in the mix. Those guys I think are definitely the top ones right there.
Okay, so let's talk about Ertz because he finished 4th last year, and I saw this on Twitter. The other thing I was going to bring up just real briefly when we were talking about Stidham, there's an article on NFL.com. It wasn't called the case for Jarrett Stidham, but it was like one of those articles where they talk about a bunch of topics, and that was one of the topics in there. And the writer, he's like, before we write off Stidham and say what a stupid decision this is, here are the facts that we know about Stidham. Yeah. And actually, I was like, this actually sounds a lot like what Belichick, something that Bill Belichick would do. All right, moving back to this. So Zach Ertz, a lot of people say, the end is nigh for Ertz because it's going to be the Goddard season. So, but I look at this, Dave, and this is the tweet that I saw. It actually might have been somebody on the FFPC's timeline talking about how I feel like every year people are saying that, this is the year that Ertz falls off the cliff, and every year he's getting 100-plus targets and, finishing in the top 3 or 4 tight ends. The 2 Kentucky drafts I've done this year, I've ended up with Ertz as tight end in both of them, and I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, he falls a little bit because of that narrative, and he, the thing last year, people are saying he's not going to do as good as he did the year before, and he didn't, but he did pretty darn well.
He wasn't as efficient, but he got more balls.
He was impactful. I mean, he had a good season, and if you had Ertz, now if you draft him in the first round or early second round in FFPC, it probably didn't work out great for you, but he wasn't terrible. I mean, you could have done a lot worse than those picks. Yeah. And there's a lot of bust picks in those ranges, and that Ertz was definitely not a bust.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Moving on to the number 7 tight end. I can't believe it. because he didn't do much for most of the season, but he really came on like gangbusters. In fact, a lot of the champions we had on in January and February on this show had this guy in their starting lineup during the championship round, and that was Tyler Higbee for the Rams, a guy who was playing behind Everett despite getting the big deal. The Rams extended him, and he got the bigger deal between him and Everett was outproducing him until, I don't know, halfway through the season, 2/3 of the way through the season, Higbee really came on. He was tight end 7 last year, Dave, which really surprised me. This year, FFPC drafters are taking him as tight end 8 in the middle of the 6th. Too early, or does that make sense?
It makes sense because people look at the last 8 games. That's always the thing, right? Last 8 games, how did he do? And he was dominant. I mean, he was crushing it. I mean, almost all the $500,000 winners. We had so many, but right. the one $500,000 winner. But I mean, the $250,000 football guys winner. I mean, they both had Higbee, if I recall correctly.
Austin Martin won the $500,000 in the playoff challenge. He did not have Higbee because the Rams were not in the playoffs.
That is true. I'm not referring to the playoffs, but yes.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. Higbee was on Mike Paraka's roster. I can't remember if Abib had him or not. Abib Agbatova, who won the football guys. I don't think he did.
Speaking of late surges, Jared Cook, who was right below him, I actually picked Cook up in Carrington as a waiver cut. Somebody cut him. And I ended up starting him in a few spots, although I had Andrews as well. And he did really well later in the season, too. He just kind of started slowly with Breeze, and Breeze was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I like throwing to tight ends. Yeah. And he started throwing to tight ends like crazy, and Cook did really well.
You think that continues with Emmanuel Sanders there? We haven't really talked about that, the Emmanuel Sanders to New Orleans signing.
I think so. I think that Cook is going to still have a pretty good season. Breeze loves throwing 12-yard passes.
So is Sanders a bust then?
I don't necessarily think he's a bust. I think he could actually impact Michael.
He's not going early, I'll tell you that.
He could impact Michael Thomas, actually, in a negative fashion.
10:04. That's kind of early for Sanders.
I mean,
and Kamara's there, too. Don't forget about him.
I think you got to be a little bit cautious with how many passes Michael Thomas gets thrown. I mean, because he was
an insane rate last year. Yeah. No, you're right. I can get behind that. Okay, moving on here. Number 4 on this list, who finished 13th last year. He is a Seattle Seahawk now, no longer catching passes from Cam Newton in Carolina. It's going to be Russell Wilson he's catching passes from in Seattle, and that's Greg Olsen, a guy who's dealt with a lot of foot injuries, fought his way to a 13th place finish among the FFPC tight ends last year. Does he have anything left in his career, Dave, or at this point is he just kind of out there for show and Lockett and Metcalf are going to do the heavy lifting? Greg Olsen.
Where is he being drafted?
Not high. He is being 1203 is tight end 22. I mean, I guess there is a little bit of value there.
I look at I look at the volume of Wilson. I think I'm gonna have to bail on Greg Olsen. He's gonna have too many 2 for 22 weeks.
Yeah, totally. I'll tell you this. Irv Smith is going right after him. I think I'd rather have Irv Smith, even though he's sort of in a timeshare with Kyle Rudolph in Minnesota. I don't know if I'd rather have Chris Herndon than Greg Olsen. That's a horse apiece. But
Herndon's not even going to start.
Yeah, who is the starter there?
Griffin?
Oh, Ryan Griffin, yeah.
And Herndon's got all sorts of issues going on, whether it's drugs or car accidents. I don't know. Who knows what's going on?
Right.
This guy missed a whole season for crying out loud.
Right. The 2 tight ends that are going after those guys that I really love both these guys this year, Dawson Knox and Jay Sternberger. I think both those guys are primed, and I'd take both those guys in a heartbeat over any of those other 4.
Absolutely, and both have – that's the difference, right? You have a floor, but then you also have a huge upside. Who was it? There was someone on Twitter today that was talking about – it was some Dynasty account or something. It was a Twitter account. They said he compared Dawson Knox. There was a number of similarities between Dawson Knox and Mark Andrews.
Really?
They did last year.
Interesting.
They're similar seasons.
Yeah.
And including speed score and other stuff like that. So I think that's interesting. I love Dawson Knox. Love him.
Yeah, I do too. Maybe not as much as you do, apparently. Kern Reeve wants to know, Dawson Knox, a Dynasty future star or no? I don't think he's a future star. I think he's definitely in his prime. He's going to be like a top 8, top 9 tight end. But your thoughts on his stardom, his potential stardom?
Well, top 8, top 9, that's pretty good.
In his prime, I don't think he's going to hold that for that long. I mean, to me, Dave, those are his best seasons. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 5 guy. I'll put it that
so
way.
You're giving him a peak career of like a Kyle Rudolph. Yeah, that's kind of like Rudolph, right?
Yeah.
Rudolph had like an 8, 9.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying.
And then took a crap after that.
Yeah.
I think Knox is better than that. He had a really good year.
Where was he drafted?
Like fourth round, I think.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
But he was actually I know RotoViz has their tight end model, and Knox was one of the guys that was a possible success story last year for a number of reasons. And you watch Knox play, and he does.
Oh, he shares a birthday with my wife.
Nice.
And my mother-in-law.
At times, he does look like a man among boys, and they didn't have a lot. Josh Allen's not the most accurate passer, but he would make plays out there. He'd catch like a 20, 30-yard pass, and be like, he would take guys and like toss like safeties into the stands. It seemed like the guy was like a monster out there. I'm telling you, Dawson Knox. You watch him play, he's kicking everybody's ass all over the place.
He turns 24 later this year, so he's still super young. He was actually the final pick of day 2. He was the last pick of the 3rd round in 2019 last year, Dave.
Yeah.
So
I'm actually curious. After the show, I might look up YouTube Dawson Knox highlights from last year and just watching him just wreck people. It's great. Yeah. He's like a violent. He's almost like Kelsey sometimes, where Kelsey just like catches a pass 15 yards downfield and then gets pissed off and he starts pushing people around.
He actually against the Bengals last year, the game he caught his first touchdown in. The game-winning drive that Frank Gore ended up capping on a touchdown run, it was set up by a 49-yard catch by Knox where he ran over 2 Bengals defenders to set up the touchdown.
That's great.
He had 3 for 67 a touch. He finished last year at 50 targets, 28 of them he caught for 388 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, definitely. I mean,
it's funny, though, as a rookie, those are such shoddy numbers, but for a tight end, that's, like, excellent.
If he was in this year's rookie draft, Dave, where would you take him? I'll tell you this: he'd be my number 1 tight end. There's no question there.
Absolutely. If let's say someone cut him, right, and this does happen in FFPC a lot. Oh man, I mean it's so tough because this is a deep draft. You have so many good running backs and receivers.
Yep.
Late first, early second with tight end premium.
Kern is saying late third or early fourth. I'm sort of in the middle. I think I would look at him in the mid second.
I'm
late second.
Definitely higher than that.
Okay.
Myself.
Yeah. I think for me, you explained why I wouldn't with all the receivers and the running backs.
But I mean, this is FFPC. And the leagues we play are not tight end premium generally.
I get, and I'm saying in a tight end premium league, I still don't think I could take. Well, and I guess tight end premiums, I'm still deflating tight ends a little bit, but I think mid second is solid.
Mid second solid. Maybe I was a little high on it, but I mean, if you have the shot. And now you disagree, but I mean, if he's the next Austin Hooper, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's worth a lot.
That is worth a lot.
And what if he's the next, Gronky or Kittle or Kelsey? There has to be a next one of those. They do come around.
Yeah, once a generation. All right.
Generational talents. There's 3 or 4 in the NFL right now.
Okay, maybe what about the next George Kittle, fellow Iowa Hawkeye grad that we're going to talk about here? Noah Fant finished at 16. He's another breakout guy this year that I like quite a bit, catching balls from Drew Lock.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely. I think Hawkinson. In my opinion, if you own Hawkinson, I own him in one league. I think he's a possible bust, and I would try and deal him if I could.
You don't like Hawkinson, huh?
No, I do not. I think I think if you kind of semi-bust in the first year, dump him as much as you can. He had 1 good game as a rookie.
That's his first game.
I tried offering Hawkinson and like a 312 for Fant. I was a little embarrassed to offer it, but I threw it out there, and then the guy hasn't declined it yet.
Yeah.
But I would even offer I would offer Hawkinson. This is a non-tight end premium. I would offer Hawkinson and the 212 for Fant. Myself.
Yeah, it's funny is I own Hawkinson and Carrington, so I could make that. And Freaks of the Industry, I think, owns Fant. And we have a good trading history, so maybe I can make that happen. In Carrington, I have 4 tight ends. I have, I think I have Higbee in that league.
Nice.
Greg Olson, Hawkinson, and O.J. Howard. It is
That's interesting, though.
It's like a rock band. There's like the hot lead singer in Tyler Higbee. You have the weird ass drummer in O.J. Howard. You have Hawkinson, Hawkinson would be the drummer. O.J. Howard would be the bass guy because he's sort of there, but he's
just there, but doesn't really matter.
He doesn't really do anything. And then you have Greg Olson, who's the rock star lead guitarist. So
But he should be put out to pasture.
Yeah, but he was hitting drugs
yeah,
too hard on the tour.
He screws up the solos all the time,
right.
and you just can't. Okay, you're not doing any more 8-minute solos anymore in this song. You have to
actually no. Here's what it is. You saw Almost Famous, right?
Yeah.
So Olsen
would
be the lead singer, and Higbee would be the lead guitarist. That's like catching too much attention, and Olsen's kind of getting pissed off,
Yeah.
because he's getting and we'll call the band the Tight Ends or something like that.
He's the David Lee Roth of the group. He's getting longer than two.
Call it Owning the Seam is their debut album.
I think what's funny about Greg Olsen is that guy could. I think Greg Olsen will be a better announcer than he is currently a tight end. I mean, like he's the opposite.
He's a good announcer.
Yeah, he is. He's very talented.
Did you see? Maybe you even tweeted this. Tony Romo calling Tony Romo plays. Like somebody hooked up Tony Romo doing play-by-play to and then
I don't know that I did.
It was pretty good. And he's like almost getting sacked, and Romo's like doing the replay. He's like, he's like, here's his reaction. He's like, you got to get rid of the ball right here, and he just can't do it. Because he's obviously not talking about himself. This was a dub. It was very good.
That's actually really good.
All right, final tight end I want to talk about, and the only reason I bring it up was because Tom Brady, for much of his career in New England, utilized the tight ends and had two successful ones there in Gronk and Hernandez. Could we see maybe a Gronk and Hernandez light version of O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate? Given Brady's, I know he still has got the arm to throw it deep, but if he doesn't have to and he can just work Brate and Howard underneath, why wouldn't he do that?
Because he has, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I just don't see it as something that, although if they don't, the team's been talking, speaking of Ronald Jones, the team's been talking about drafting a pass-catching back. They said that specifically.
Yeah.
And if they don't draft anyone like that, though, they might lack that ability, so maybe they will start targeting tight ends a little bit more than otherwise.
Cameron Brate, tight end 34, going in the 20th round of FFPC best balls. It's not quite num, but it's close. And that's where we're going to leave it tonight here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football
Don't forget number
Hour.
29, Eric Ebron, who's going to be a tight end 6, actually.
Yeah, did you see the news on him today?
No, what was that?
He's saying that if he's not fully recovered from his ankle injury.
What a chip! I should have gotten that 10-1.
He said, I might have to just do it to be a good sport on it. Eric Ebron, I'm loading this up right now. I just read this. He said he's not 100% following his ankle operation, which he had late last season. This is after week 12 when he went on injured reserve. He said, if the season started today, I don't think I'd be able to 100% perform, but we don't play today. Which, I mean, we'll see what happens. We're like 5 months away from the start of the season. And
maybe we get a COVID-shortened season, like a 12-game.
Yeah, and then
I'm going to win.
And then it's even better because it's more time for him to recover.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. I still feel good about our bet. Not for you. I want to thank Paul Lee.
Shouldn't feel good for me.
Yes, I want to thank Paul Lee, Dave Gerzak, the FFPC, Rob Rice, and of course each and every one of you for tuning in tonight. We are live next Friday at 10/9 Central. We'll be right back here, kicking it live with another high stakes fantasy football player as our guest. I got something in the works on that right now.
I think we're about 4 feet away, and I'm not wearing a mask, just so you know.
Okay, thank you for the heads up. Check out.
A little further.
All right, next time we will. Doug Widener on the High Stakes Lowdown, rotoviz.com/podcast. Check that out as well. And the Best Ball Slims, the Best Balls Dynasty startups in the main event, all open for registration at myffpc.com. Remember to stay at home, stay safe, and still have a good weekend. I hope you do. The weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. That was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
We're on the scenic floor, even more so if we on tour. Me and E explore the country, wondering about the evening before. Trying to explain where the time went, while other rappers find a studio to grind in.
We got this in the studio on Never Say Never Again. It's a Sean Connery Bond movie.
Yes.
I didn't realize he fought a shark in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
This is insane.
Connery is badass, unlike that piece of crap Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton is such a wuss bag. He's the worst Bond. I mean,
1983.
People could argue about Roger Moore not being that great, but I liked Roger Moore in a lot of ways. At least he was cheeky.
Yeah. Timothy Dalton was cheeky in Hot Fuzz. He was great.
Oh, that's true. He was great. I mean, I don't dislike Timothy Dalton in general.
Right.
I'm just saying as Bond, he wasn't that great. Even Remington Steele was okay. I mean, Pierce Brosnan, he's a little bit, of a wimp too.
After the Sunset, I think you said you already saw that. That's a really good Pierce Brosnan movie.
I like Pierce Brosnan also as a person, actor, and all that stuff. So
right.
I just didn't like him as much as Bond.
What was the other thing I was going to say about Bond? Timothy Dalton. I can't remember what it's called, but it was a movie starring Colin Farrell and Gabriel Macht.
Phone booth?
Ali Larder. No, it was all about the
good?
Jesse James gang, like robbing trains.
Oh, really?
Some outlaws. I think it was called American Outlaws.
All right.
And Dalton played the sheriff that was chasing him across the country. He was pretty good in that.
That's
too.
funny.
That's
like a Timothy Oliphant role.
Yeah, well, it's a guilty pleasure type movie. I don't brag about liking it, but it is not bad.
That's all right.
Hopefully everyone brags about liking this show and you tell all your friends because we love doing it. We'll talk to you next week.
Later. That was good.